college, I used to house sit for a family every year when they went on their annual vacations. While I'd had a handful of unsettling experiences in different homes, this one ultimately made me quit house sitting for them. I was in my 20s, juggling multiple side gigs to make ends meet, and this one paid well. The family was leaving for a 2-week trip abroad and wouldn't have cell service, so if anything happened, I'd have to contact the police or one of their relatives. I had already experienced a few creepy moments in this house before, but they were never terrifying enough to deter me, especially since the pay was generous. Having worked at an animal shelter, I was well versed in cat behavior, and this family had 4 well-mannered cats. Everything was fine for the first few days. I slept in the guest bedroom and attended classes from their home since it was close enough to walk, saving me from parking fees and the hassle of bringing lunch. Then, things started to take a turn. A few days in, my boyfriend stopped by with dinner to keep me company, knowing the house always made me a little uneasy. We ate in the guest bedroom while watching TV for a few hours, but when he was about to leave, he hesitated. He had a strong gut feeling that he needed to sleep at home that night and urged me to leave with him. By then, it was already midnight, and I wasn't eager to go home. My relationship with my parents was strained, and house-sitting was my only escape. My sibling, who was also my best friend, had moved out due to the toxic environment, and without them, home didn't feel like home anymore. I reassured my boyfriend that I'd be fine, locking everything up as usual. He was still reluctant and tried to convince me one last time, explaining that, while he had stayed over before, something about tonight felt different. I dismissed it, reasoning that the house was over a century old, but had been recently renovated. I reminded him that the neighborhood was safe. I always set the security alarm, and the 4 cats were my only company. He finally left, but that's when things began happening. I secured all doors and windows, set the alarm, and settled into bed. Then, the TV turned on by itself. Thinking I had accidentally pressed the remote, I looked over, but it was still on the nightstand. I switched the TV off, but as soon as I did, it flicked back on. What was even weirder was that it didn't turn onto a regular channel. It was just a black and white screen, as if there was no signal. I kept turning it off, but it would immediately turn back on. My nerves started to get the best of me, so I unplugged the TV entirely. Though I had dealt with eerie experiences in this house before, this had never happened. I convinced myself it was a wiring issue from the renovations, but I still opted to sleep on the couch instead. The following night, my boyfriend came over again. When I told him about the TV incident, he reiterated that I should have gone home. I was shaken, but still, I preferred this over dealing with my parents. We had dinner together and started watching a movie in the living room. To better explain the house's layout, it had 2 floors. The front door led directly into the living room, while a staircase at the back led down to the basement, which was more of a large second living space with a spare bedroom. The stairs were old, creaky, and unsettling. I was surprised they weren't replaced during the renovation. The cats had free reign of the house, but preferred hanging around people without being too clingy. The youngest of the 4, just 3 years old, was smaller and more energetic than the others. As we watched the movie, I suddenly froze. From the basement, I heard what sounded like a baby crying. My boyfriend turned to me, his expression confirming that he had heard it too. My training at the animal shelter taught me that some cats, when distressed, can make noises eerily similar to a crying infant. I counted the cats. Only 3 were in sight. The youngest was missing. Assuming he had somehow gotten stuck downstairs, I made my way to the basement. Sure enough, I found him trapped in the spare room, likely having nudged the door shut while exploring. I picked him up, carried him upstairs, and we resumed the movie. Later that night, we paused the film to feed the cats, as they were on a strict schedule. Their feeding station was in the kitchen, which was the only access point to both the living room and the basement. After meals, they usually wandered off to nap in either the master bedroom or the child's room, which smelled like their owners. This was part of their routine every year, so I wasn't concerned when they disappeared after eating. My boyfriend and I continued our dinner in the kitchen, which was now void of any cats. Then, we heard it again, the same crying sound from the basement. This time, it was much louder. I didn't see any cats nearby, but I was already unnerved and hesitant to check. My boyfriend looked uneasy, but I reassured him that it was probably the same cat again. Still, something felt off. The cries were more frequent, and the pitch was noticeably higher than before. Slowly, I turned on the basement lights and crept down the stairs, calling the missing cat's name. The crying got louder with each step, but just as I reached the bottom, it stopped. I frantically searched the basement, checking the spare room, under furniture, and in every crevice. The cat was nowhere to be found. My heart pounded as panic set in. I am not the type to run. I don't jog. I don't sprint. But I ran up those stairs like my life depended on it. As I reached the kitchen, an icy wave of terror washed over me. My boyfriend stood there looking horrified. Surrounding him were all 4 cats. They had been upstairs the entire time. A deep sense of dread took over. Without saying a word, I grabbed my bag and stuffed everything into it as fast as I could. My boyfriend did the same, and within minutes, we left the house. For the remainder of my time house-sitting, I only returned once a day, just long enough to clean the litter box and leave food. I know I was breaking their feeding schedule, but I no longer cared. When the final day arrived, I locked up, placed the key in its hiding spot, and sent the family a message thanking them for the opportunity, but letting them know I wouldn't be returning. I hated that house. Looking back, I realized the unsettling experiences had been escalating each year. I should have quit much sooner. I still remember the drive home, calling my sibling to tell them what had happened. That's when they admitted they'd had their own eerie experiences there, but had never told me, because they knew I was trying to save money to move out and didn't want to scare me. My name is Alon, and at the time of this event, I was 17 years old. I stand at 5'3". My friend Jessa is taller at 5'8", and my other friend Miguel is 5'7". It was June 10th, 2018, and I was dog-sitting for some extra money before heading off to college the following year. It was a cool summer night, and the people I was house-sitting for had an amazing sunroom that my friends and I loved hanging out in. Since I figured dog-sitting would be more fun with company, I invited 2 of my friends to stay over. Jessa and Miguel were a few years older than me. Jessa was 23 and Miguel was 22. They brought along some vodka, and we planned to have a chill night of drinking, smoking, and catching up. For the first few hours, everything was going great. We laughed, talked, and enjoyed ourselves. Then, we started receiving a series of phone calls. At first, we didn't think much of it, but then we remembered something strange. the landline was supposed to be disconnected. That immediately made us feel uneasy. At first, we ignored the calls, assuming that whoever it was would leave a message or try again in the morning since it was nearly midnight. But the ringing continued over and over, and it became clear that this person was not going to stop until someone answered. Finally, Miguel picked up the phone. On the other end was a man claiming he had found the homeowner's wallet at a gas station about 25 minutes away from the house. The entire story felt strange to us because we knew the owners were out of town. He insisted that we needed to come pick it up immediately, which made no sense. After going back and forth for several minutes, Miguel firmly told him that we weren't leaving the house and that we would deal with it in the morning. As soon as we hung up, all three of us felt uneasy. Something about the entire conversation left a weird feeling in our stomachs. We grabbed the dog, Bante, and ran into the back bedroom, locking the door and shutting all the blinds. We were all a little on edge, but given that we had been drinking and smoking, we wondered if maybe we were just overreacting. We tried to rationalize the situation, telling ourselves that maybe the guy just wanted to make sure the wallet was returned to its owner. Hours passed, and we slowly started to relax again. We continued drinking, smoking, and watching a funny movie to lighten the mood. Eventually, we moved from the sunroom to the living room and popped in a DVD. The sunroom, which was between the kitchen and the backyard pool, had a door leading outside. The problem was that the door didn't have a lock on it. However, the door leading from the kitchen to the sunroom did have a lock, but it also had a doggy door that Bante used when he needed to go outside. Since we were still a little spooked, we agreed to keep that door unlocked for Bante, but reassured ourselves that we were in a safe neighborhood. Plus, Bante was a good guard dog. If anything suspicious happened, he'd bark and alert us. As the night went on, we sat in the living room, laughing on the couches, Jessa and I on one, and Miguel on the other. Eventually, the clock struck 3:00 a.m., and that's when everything took a turn. Do you ever get that unshakable feeling that someone is watching you? That's what happened to me. I was completely absorbed in the movie when, out of nowhere, an overwhelming sense of unease hit me. I turned my head toward the kitchen, and my blood ran cold. A dark figure was crouched down near the cabinets. For a moment, I was convinced my mind was playing tricks on me. I watched as the figure slowly reached up into one of the cabinets. My stomach dropped. There was a person inside the house. I nudged Jessa's side with my elbow and whispered, "Jessa, I think there's someone in the kitchen." She turned her head and let out a scream so loud it sent chills down my spine. The figure immediately whipped its head around, locking eyes with me. A surge of fear ran through my body as I took in the only visible feature of the intruder, his piercing blue eyes, which stood out against the dim orange glow from the lamp below the cabinet. He was covered head to toe in black, a hoodie, pants, shoes, gloves, and even a ski mask that concealed most of his face. Miguel, who had remained frozen until now, suddenly stood up and yelled, "Get the way out!" The man didn't run or panic. Instead, he calmly closed the cabinet door, turned around, and walked straight out of the sunroom doors. As soon as he left, the three of us bolted to the farthest corner of the room, clutching onto one another as we fumbled to call 911. Within 3 minutes, the police arrived and searched the entire house. They took our statements and decided to sit outside for the rest of the night, just in case the intruder returned. But we didn't wait around to find out if he would. We left everything behind, our booze, our weed, even my car. We We just grabbed Bante and got out. The next day, we returned to the house, still shaken from the events of the night before. What we found only unsettled us more. Clothes were scattered throughout different rooms, items had been moved around, and there were crumbs by the doggy door, meaning someone had likely been sneaking in and out without us noticing. Even more disturbing, Bante, who normally barked at strangers, hadn't made a sound. It was as if he had already known the person who had broken in. But there was one last thing that made my stomach churn. On the kitchen counter, right where the intruder had been rummaging through the cabinets, sat a small, folded piece of paper. My hands trembled as I reached for it, unfolding it slowly. Scrawled in jagged, messy handwriting were the words, "I could have taken more. Next time, I will." To this day, we still have no idea who was calling us or who entered that house. The thought that someone had been inside, moving around, completely unnoticed, still haunts me. Even now, I refuse to go back. The job posting was straightforward enough. Pet sitter needed for 3 nights, generous pay. Must not be afraid of birds. Apply in person at 13 Luna Street, San Juan. Maria Santos stared at her phone screen, the glow illuminating her cramped dorm room in Manila. Her part-time job at the university cafeteria barely covered her rent, and the promise of generous pay hooked her. Birds? She'd grown up with her Lola's rowdy cockatoo in the provinces. How bad could it be? The house on Luna Street was an ancestral home, its once white walls stained grey by decades of smog. Vines clawed up the wrought iron gate, and the garden was a graveyard of dried frangipani blossoms. Maria's knock echoed hollowly. The door creaked open before she could knock again. A woman in her 70s stood there, her spine curved like a question mark. Her eyes were milky, as if veiled by cataracts, but her grip on the doorframe was unnervingly strong. "You're here for Perla," she said. Not a question. "Yes, Po. I'm Maria. Come." The woman, Arling Rosa, according to the posting, shuffled inside without glancing back. The house smelled of mothballs and Palo Santo, the sharp sweetness clashing with something darker beneath, like wet soil. Maria followed her into a dim sala dominated by a sagging sofa and a wooden altar crammed with santos. The eyes of the saints followed her as Arling Rosa pointed to a larger bamboo basque cage in the corner. Inside it was a parrot, not just any parrot. Its feathers were a sickly green, molting in patches to reveal greyish skin. One eye was clouded, the other, a pinprick of black, fixed on Maria with unsettling intensity. The bird's beak hung slightly open, as if frozen mid-scream. "This is Perla," Arling Rosa said. "Feed her twice a day. Rice and dried fish there." She gestured to a plastic container on a side table. "Change her water. Do not let her out." "Of course, Po," Maria said. Then, hesitating, "Does she talk?" Arling Rosa's lips twitched. "Oh, she talks." She turned abruptly, her tourneau dress whispering against the floor. "You sleep here. The sofa folds out. Do not go into the bedroom at the end of the hall. Understood?" Maria nodded, though the old woman wasn't looking. "What if there's an emergency?" Arling Rosa paused at the foot of the stairs. "There won't be." The first night was quiet. Too quiet. Maria unfolded the lumpy sofa bed, the springs groaning beneath her. The house had no air conditioning, just a lone electric fan that oscillated with a tired whir. Perla's cage sat shrouded in a bedsheet. She needs darkness to sleep, Arling Rosa had insisted, but Maria couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She woke to the sound of scratching. Scritch, 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 like nails on wood. Maria sat up, sweat gluing her shirt to her back. The fan had died. The power was out. Moonlight bled through the Capiz shell windows, painting the sala in fractured silver. The scratching came again, louder, from the cage. Maria approached slowly. The sheet over Perla's cage trembled. A taloned foot hooked over the edge of the fabric, dragging it down. The parrot's good eye gleamed in the dark, its head tilted, and when it spoke, its voice was not a squawk but a raspy, high-pitched mimicry of Arling Rosa's. "Do not go into the bedroom." Maria stumbled back. The parrot let out a guttural chuckle, then clacked its beak. "Gising na siya," it whispered. "She's awake." By morning, Maria convinced herself it was a dream. The power returned. The fan sputtered to life. Perla sat motionless in her cage, feathers puffed, silent. Arling Rosa had left a landline number, but when Maria tried it, the line crackled with static. The second night, the heat was worse. Maria lay awake, replaying the parrot's words. Gising na siya. Who was she? The bedroom? No, that was ridiculous. At midnight, the scratching began again. Maria threw off her blanket. "Stop it," she hissed at the cage. The sheet slid to the floor. Perla's head swiveled 180 degrees, owl-like, to face her. "Maria," it crooned, elongating her name into a sing-song taunt. "Bakit ka natatakot? Why are you scared?" "How do you know my name?" Maria demanded, her voice trembling. The parrot's beak snapped. "Lahat alam ko." "I know everything." It hopped to the side of the cage, wings half spread. "Si Rosa, hindi na siya babalik." "Rosa, she won't come back." Maria's throat tightened. "What do you mean?" Perla let out a shrill laugh. Then, in a different voice, a young man's, deep and panicked, it cried, "Tulong, tulong, nandito siya sa kwarto." "Help, she's in the room, the bedroom, the forbidden bedroom." Maria's legs moved before her mind could protest. The hallway stretched endlessly, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath her. The door at the end was slightly ajar. She pushed it open. The room was empty. No bed, no furniture. Only a large black stain on the floorboards, warping the wood. The stench hit her then. Rotting meat, sulfur. Maria gagged, covering her nose. Behind her, wings flapped. Perla perched on the doorframe, head cocked. "Nakita mo na siya," it hissed. "You've seen her." "Who?" Maria screamed. The parrot's voice dropped to a guttural growl, the words bubbling like tar. "Ang manananggal." Maria froze. Manananggal. The viscera-smeared monster of Filipino folklore. The woman who splits in half, her torso flying on bat-like wings to hunt pregnant women. A children's story. A myth. But the stain on the floor, it wasn't a stain. It was a hole, gnawed through the wood, and something glistened deep inside it. Maria backed away, but Perla shot into the room, circling her head. Too late, it shrieked in Arling Rosa's voice. "She's hungry." A wet, tearing sound erupted from the hole. A hand, slick with blood, fingers too long, clawed at the edges. Then another. A head emerged, hair matted, jaw unhinged. The upper half of a woman, her entrails trailing behind her like ribbons. Maria ran. Perla's laughter chased her down the hall. You shouldn't have looked. She slammed the sala door, wedging a chair under the knob. The thing in the bedroom wailed, a sound like a dying pig. Maria grabbed her bag, fumbling for her keys, but the front door wouldn't budge. Locked. Perla landed on the altar, knocking over a santo. Stay, it croaked. Stay and feed her like the others. Maria's knees gave out. The others. The ones before her, the ones who'd answered the ad. The reason Aling Rosa didn't need to come back. The Manananggal's claws scraped the door. Perla hopped closer, her diseased feathers brushing Maria's ear. Don't worry, the parrot whispered. You'll join us soon. Outside, the moon vanished behind a cloud, and the scratching began again.